Welcome back to News Center. To another big story that we are tracking. New Delhi has lodged a strong protest with Beijing after an Arunachal Pradesh-born woman was detained at the Shanghai Airport. This after Chinese authorities declared her Indian passport invalid. The woman alleged that the authorities detained her for 18 hours and called Arunachal Pradesh a Chinese territory. She said she was mocked during the detention and asked to apply for a Chinese passport. Sources told CNBC-TV18 our consulate in Shanghai has taken up the matter, and this is not the first time that Beijing has reinforced its claims over Arunachal Pradesh through diplomatic and administrative provocation. This includes China's long criticized practice of issuing staple visas instead of stamped visas to residents of Arunachal Pradesh.
I was traveling on my holiday from London Gatwick to Japan via a transit in Shanghai. And basically, I went past the e-gates, happily queuing up for the security gates to transfer onto my next flight onto Osaka in Japan. And one of the officials from the Chinese immigration came over and singled me out of the queue, basically said, look, India, took my name and something and took me out. In fact, when I tried to question them and ask them what was the issue, they said Arunachal is not part of India, very clearly. And they said, you should apply, and started mocking and laughing and saying things like, you should apply for a Chinese passport. You're Chinese, you're not Indian.
All right, to take this forward, we're now joined by Brahma Chalani, Strategic Affairs expert, and also Anil Trigunath. Brahma Chalani, how do you see this? Do you see this as a one-off, or could this be an escalation over the kind of behavior that China has shown the people of Arunachal Pradesh?
This is the latest in a series of provocations by China. Every now and then they do something new to provoke India, knowing that India will only respond by submitting a démarche, a diplomatic protest. In fact, every time we submit a diplomatic protest to China over a Chinese provocation, I'm sure the mandarins in Beijing laugh at India's démarche, because this is what the Indians do. They respond to Chinese provocations by submitting démarche. That's all that India does, and that is the reason why China feels emboldened to continue with its provocations. We are unable to respond in kind. For example, if they're going to be doing all these things in relation to our people from Arunachal Pradesh, for example, shouldn't we at least minimally give staple visas to Chinese residents of Tibet? After all, the Chinese residents of Tibet are living in Tibet only after Tibet came under Chinese occupation. So at least we can turn the tables on Beijing, but we are most reluctant to do anything. So what happens is that every now and then, China ups the ante, it provokes India, and India responds in a very similar fashion.
All right, Anil Trigunath, if I can bring you in at this point, how do you think India should treat this at a time when we're trying to normalize and stabilize economic ties with Beijing?
Well, as you know, the sovereignty and territorial integrity are supreme as far as India is concerned. But this particular incident, which has happened, has repeated again. And as Dr. Chalani said, frankly, earlier also, when the team was supposed to go from India, they said, we can't do, you don't need any visas. So they keep provoking India in this particular sense. I don't know if it is a part of their policy, because if you hear their spokesperson, she said they acted as per the rules and laws. So that means that is very much the case, that anybody from Arunachal Pradesh passing through China or visiting China will continue to face these problems. And I fully agree, although we have very strongly protested, which has been the normal diplomatic channel of doing so. But if we wish to escalate, we will have to continue to find new ways of providing them equal kind of a pain as they have been inflicting on Indian citizens from Arunachal Pradesh. Now, this is something that absolutely requires a harder line. But on the other hand, India and China both on the broader scale, are trying to normalize ties, trying to take them forward under a very, very difficult global situation. And that is the reason that this will continue to attract greater attention. And I'm sure that Indian government will continue to take it up in other discussion forums or the channel of communications that we have, apart from the one-time immediate action that was taken by our consulate in Shanghai, as well as the Ministry of External Affairs.
Right. How do you see the timing of this, Mr. Chelani? Because we often hear of staple visas. We hear of athletes from Arunachal Pradesh being denied entry into China. But perhaps this is the first known case. Is there a message to it? Also, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson has denied harassment of this Indian national from Arunachal.
If detaining a female for 18 hours at Shanghai Airport is not harassment, what is harassment then? China is one of the very few places in the world, probably the only country in the world, where a transit passenger, an international transit passenger, coming from outside China and passing through a Chinese airport to go to a third country has to go through immigration. In no other country am I aware where a transit passenger requires to go through immigration. So first, this is the strange practice in China. Second, we talk about India and China being engaged in normalizing ties. But it's interesting that that effort at normalizing ties does not deter China from provoking India. This is only the latest in a series of provocations by China since Modi and Xi Jinping decided, when they met on the sidelines of a summit, to try and normalize relations.
Right.
So the question is, why is it that only India feels restrained? Why is it that China continues to up the ante against India? This is something we need to think about. And most fundamentally, I think, and this is the key point, that Tibet remains at the center of the India-China divide. Look at any issue between India and China, territorial disputes, diplomatic tensions, feuds over river waters, all center on Tibet. And yet, India is so reluctant to even spotlight, to shine a light on Tibet as the core issue between India and China. We can do it in ways that does not require or does not amount to renouncing formally any of our previously stated positions on Tibet. So we need to find ways to reclaim our leverage.
Right. So clearly, this is messaging by China that it's not given up claims on its core issues. And they also want to test India's stand while both sides are negotiating how to put the relationship on track. We've run out of time, but thank you very much, Brahma Chelani, Anil Trigunath, for being with us. Let's shift focus also